All right, we're going to start chapter 6 with a quick review on how to graph on a number line. And these are the first two things that I need you to remember, that your variable always comes first. It doesn't necessarily mean that the variable has to be in the front. It's just that when you say it in your mind or say it out loud, make sure that you have the variables, comes first. And secondly, make sure you know your fraction and decimal. If you need practice on this, I will have a quick review on this for you as well. But it's best that you know how to divide up your whole into different parts. Okay, so we'll see that in a minute. So let's take a look and review here for the four symbols that associate with inequalities. You have the greater than, less than, greater than or equal, less than or equal. Okay. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have heard of this before, where the mouth is always facing the bigger value or is eating the bigger value. Just kind of keep that in mind, that when the mouth of their symbol is facing a number or whatever, it is facing the bigger variable or a number. Okay, so here's some of the terms that I need you to remember. For example, more than, less than. Probably some of you have not heard of this, but at most means less than or equal as well. So if you hear this term, at most, it also means less than or equal. Okay? And you have heard of the word at least already. Okay, so some other terms: greater than, fewer than, no more than, no less than, and of course, less than or equal and greater than or equal. I really strongly encourage you to review this chart, okay, this table of symbols before you start on anything at all, okay, because you need to familiarize yourself with these specific terms to better prepare you with this next lesson. Okay, so let's start with our first example here for this particular concept of graphing a number line. Here's my first example for you. So pretend I have this inequality. Let's go ahead and try to read this out loud with me. This is x less than 4, right? X is less than 4. X is any value, any number. So, ideally, I really encourage you to kind of write out in a phrase, x is less than 4. You know that anything that's less than 4 has to be on the left-hand side of it, okay? So, for example, 3, 2, 1, 0, all the negative numbers will be less than 4, right? So how do we actually graph this on a number line? Well, the first thing that you need to do is to have a number line first. Always locate the 0, okay? It's right there, right in the center. And we know that 4 is on the right-hand side of 0, so let's go ahead and locate 4 as well. So first we have our number lined up. We know that we're looking for any number that is less than 4, so anything that's less than 4. Well, let's locate 4. Where is 4? 4 is on the right-hand side of 0, 4 units away to the right-hand side, so here's 4. And we know that anything less than 4, well, let's locate 4 right there. And how do we use, we learned this in the past, whether to use an open or a solid circle. Well, this time I'm going to go ahead and show you specifically what to use here. Every time we have a symbol that's either less than or greater than without the bar below, we always use the open circle, okay? When we have symbols such as greater than or equal, less than or equal, then we need to use what we call a solid circle. Reason for using a solid is because we want to include the value, okay? So this means to include, and the open means exclude, meaning we don't include it. We don't count that number at all, okay? So in this case, anything that's less than 4, we cannot have 4 in it, okay? Because 4 is not less than 4. Therefore, we have to exclude 4. Exclude means we have to use the open circle, okay? All right, so we know that because we have this symbol, we have to use open circle, and anything that's less than 4 has to be on the left-hand side. So therefore, we have our arrow going back to the left-hand side. Okay, that's how we graph it on a number line. This is one-dimensional. Okay, well, we haven't talked about two-dimensional graphing yet, which will occur soon. But for now, just try to focus yourself on graphing one-dimensional. So I want you to go ahead and try this next example yourself. Here it is. Go ahead and try that one before you move on to the next example. And by the way, I'll be looking for this when you come back to class as well, because this is actually part of your homework. Actually, in your, part of your classwork, when you come back. So it's better off to finish it and check your answer when you come back tomorrow. Alright, so here's another one I want to show you. This says, well, remember I always ask you to go ahead and try to say it out loud in words. For example, what is this? This is x not equal to -2. So let's go ahead and write that. X is not equal to -2. Well, we know that anything that's not equal to -2 is basically any number except -2, right? So let's go ahead and give ourselves a clue right here. Anything but -2. So how do we exclude -2? What symbol do we need to use to exclude -2? We know that we have to use the open circle, because that one tells us that this is excluding, right? The solid dot, solid circle means include. So since we don't want to include -2, we have to use the open circle. And once again, we have our number line set up. Here's the 0. This time the -2 is on the left-hand side of 0, 2 units away. And since we don't want to include -2, and we know that anything that's not equal to -2 is just basically everything except -2. So we can have our number line spanning going to the left and to the right, and we don't have it including -2. Okay, so anything but -2. So that's an easy one. I want you to go ahead and try this next sample yourself. Shouldn't be too hard. Okay, so go ahead and work on that. Here's next example. So pretend this time, so far we've had integers only, right? So what if I want to include fraction this time? So how's that going to change the game? Well, let's take a look at this. I want you to go and try to read this out loud. Remember our rule here. We said that we want our variables to come first. So when we write our sentence, we want to make sure that the variable has to go first. So when we write it, we'll say, we know that n is, well, how do you read this? Starting with the variable n. Okay, we know that the mouth of the symbol is facing letter n, so that means letter n is the bigger value, right? So since n is bigger, then you have to say n is greater than or equal to, because of this bar below, right? N is greater than or equal to, so let's write that. It's greater than or equal to 2/3. Well, we know that when we have greater than or equal, we include, right? Because of the word equal. So first of all, I know I'm going to be using a solid dot, solid circle, if you will. Okay. So let's kind of try to locate 2/3. It's not a whole number, but we know that 2/3, if you have to kind of represent it using a picture, it's going to be 1 whole, and 2 of the 3 boxes will be shaded in. That's how we represent 2/3, right? So how do we represent something like this on a number line? Well, let's still set up our number line right here. Here is our 0. Here's 1. We know that 2/3 is not quite 1 yet. It's bigger than 0, but it's not quite 1. So it's definitely in between 0 and 1. So if this represents 1 whole, just like the picture that we have up here, how do we represent 2/3? So 1 whole, we'll cut it into 3 equal parts. So we only want 2 out of the 3. Here's the 3 parts right here. And since we only want 2 out of 3, so this is 1/3, 2/3, 3/3 is 1 whole. So we know that. So 2/3 will be right here. And since we know we have to use a solid dot, so we're going to have a solid dot right there. Let's go back to the sentence that we just wrote. This is n is greater than. We know that anything greater than has to be on the right-hand side. This is where our big numbers, positive number, occurs, right? So therefore, your arrow is going to be going to the right-hand side this time. Okay, so try to keep that in mind, that your variable comes first. The terms, for example, greater than, more than, will associate with the right-hand side. That means your arrow is going to go into the right. And when you use the word like less than, fewer than, okay, then that means the arrow is going to be going on the left-hand side. But don't forget, the variable has to come first. okay, always. So with that in mind, I'd like you to go ahead and try this next example, this next problem yourself. M is less than, I shouldn't be saying that, but just go ahead and try this, okay? Take a look at this last example. See if you can actually say this out loud. This is B is less than or equal, right? Less than or equal. So once again, we know we're going to have to be using a solid dot because of the including part. Less than or equal to -7/4. Okay, so once again, this is not a whole number. It doesn't look good. However, we know that this improper fraction can be converted back to a mixed number. Why is it so important we want to convert back to a mixed number? Because -7/4 can be written like this, -1 3/4, right? So it consists of 1 whole and 3/4, okay? So, and it's also on the negative side. So let's go ahead and set up our number line again. Here's the 0. This is 1, -1, because it's on the left-hand side of 0. This is -2. Now, how do I know I need to have to go beyond -1? Because think about this. It's -1 whole, so you know it's going to go definitely as far as -1, and then you have to go 3/4 more. Since it's negative, you still have to go to the left-hand side, right? So it's going to go 1 whole and 3/4 more. Well, we know 3/4, we have to divide this next portion into 4 equal pieces, like so. And then we have to find where 3/4 is. So this is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So it's going to be right there. See that? So 1 whole, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Going to the left because it's a negative. Solid because we know it's less than or equal. And because we said less than. Remember what I told you before? Less is to go to the left. Greater means to go to the right, and always the variable comes first, right? We say it when we say this inequality, we have to make sure the variable comes first. Therefore, your arrow is going to be coming to the left-hand side. Okay, so I hope that's easy enough. I want you to go ahead and try this example. This problem yourself, and I'll be checking in with you when you come back. There it is. Okay, and that concludes the lesson.